Robert, thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
And I will let you take it from here.
Sure. Thank you, Michelle. I appreciate that. And thank you all for joining us today. To Michelle's point, we had quite a discussion yesterday about different ways to improve the profits in your business. Conversion rate being one of the primary ways to do that. And what we mean by conversion rate is how of the leads that you get in your business, of people that engage with you, what is the percentage that actually become customers? And this is a critical metric to have that most people, quite frankly, don't measure. And so once you understand how important it is and that you do need to measure it in order to grow your business, you think, well, okay, well, how do I improve it? How to make my salespeople more effective, more productive in their respective areas? And so this presentation is specifically about sales techniques. I will tell you, it's a lot of content. You may want to have some notes out today because we're going to move fairly quickly. This is typically could go a couple of hours, and there's some things in here that could, quite frankly, be their own presentation. But I wanted to give you guys as much information as I could. So, and if you do have questions, as Michelle said, please put them in the chat box or in the Q&A section, and we'll take care of those at the end of the presentation. So again, the main reason for covering these types of subjects is we all know there's been a pretty major economic impact due to COVID, and here in Texas, oil and gas as well. And so what we're seeing is there was a Yelp article that they put out. I guess they do a quarterly economic outlook based on businesses that have profiles on Yelp. And so they're primarily business to consumer businesses. They're, restaurants, professional services, retail, things like this. And the disturbing thing is, we've been unable to really quantify what the impact is of our, last couple of months. So the disturbing thing is we got a couple of months worth of data now, and of the closures, so a business can state themselves as temporarily closed when there's a lockdown, right? Or permanently closed if they don't plan to reopen. And that ratio, at least in Texas, we primarily look at Texas economic data, but that the percentage of businesses that are not reopening is just over 60%, which is way higher than what we would want it to be or what we expected. And so the ability to improve your relationship to your customers, your interaction with your customers, in order to be able to achieve the amount of sales that you need to achieve to survive this kind of economic drop is critical. So that's why, I wanted to give you everything that I could today to think about tidbits, tools, techniques, these kinds of things, so that maybe, you can use them in your business and able to improve your sales process in order to get more customers buying from you, and hopefully more often. So we'll dive right into this because again, it's fairly long presentation. So to start out, even I think everybody would agree that even professional salespeople find making sales a challenge. It's very fluid. There's so much variability in who you're talking to, what particular product, what's influencing their buying decisions, and so on and so forth. So even if you're skilled in sales, you can find yourself in slumps, if you will, periodically. It happens to everybody. So, and this is kind of this is a question that I'm not going to run through the chat box, but the question is, are sales decisions based on logic or emotion? and what is the percentage of those decisions that are based on those two? So the answer is 20% logic, 80% emotion. And so thus the need to actually connect with the consumer, right? You're offering them a solution to whatever problem it is that they perceive that they have, or um, they believe your product or service will solve that for them. But quite frankly, they don't know that, right? And that's your job as a salesperson, is to explain to them how it is a solution for their situation. So there are 4 types of salespeople. The first one is the order taker. They wait for somebody to ask if they can buy something. I think, and as we go through these, you'll be able to personify these with businesses that you've been in, or people that you know, or this, that, and the other. Next one is the product pusher. They talk solely about the product, right? I'm sure we've all experienced that. Maybe you went to a car lot and they talk about features and whatnot of the vehicle the entire time, not about what your needs are in a vehicle, not about trying to find out exactly what type of vehicle may be best for you or your family, and whatnot. So, and there's many more examples of this. This is a pretty common one that's, quite frankly, very ineffective. Then you have the overseller. That's somebody who will tell you that their product or service will, generate world peace if you just buy it. And then after the sale, there's no follow-up. There's no discussion. There's just, once the sale is done, the salesman is gone. And the last one is the problem solver. This is what a sales force should be. This is what you want them to be practicing. This is the style that you want them to do. So they help the customer find what they need. So they do not sell something necessarily as much as they help a customer buy. So the customer is interacting with you because they want or need something. And so the salesperson's job is really to just guide them to whatever the solution is that's best for them. So we have a quick poll question here. And if you would please vote in the poll of what type of salesperson that you would identify with. And I'll give it a few seconds so we can get some, pretty good participation here. Okay. Just a couple more seconds and then we'll have to close it. All right, perfect. So we had 88% that identify with the problem solver, and 6% each for product pusher and order taker. We had nobody that identified with the overseller. So that's perfect. And moving forward. So beliefs, this is beliefs about salespeople, sales in general. Beliefs are things that you hold to be true, right? So they're ideas that have been formed over time about these respective areas. So I'd like for you, if you could, write down 5 beliefs you have about salespeople, customers, products and services, and also 5 beliefs you have about money. And moving forward a little bit more, we're going to talk about communication. we all know that being a good communicator is the only way that you can be successful in sales, right? But a little bit different way to look at that process, the dialogue that you're having with the customer. Communication is not what you say. True communication is the response you're getting back. So if you're saying the right things, asking the right questions, then the other party is going to be the person actually giving you the information that you need within the conversation. If you're communicating effectively, but you're not getting any response back, or you're not getting the proper response back, that means that what you're saying or how you're saying it needs to be tweaked in some degree to improve the conversations moving forward. And we'll talk about this a little bit here. So the language systems diagnostic instrument. It's designed to teach you about how you and others communicate. And again, this could be an entire webinar on its own, quite frankly, but we'll cover kind of the high points. So poll question number 2, what do you think best describes your communication and learning style? And there are 3 learning styles, 3 learning modalities: visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. So visual is you have to see something in order to learn it. Auditory is you are able to hear and lock it in. Kinesthetic is I need to touch it, feel it, do it myself in order to effectively learn it. Okay, we will close the poll now. So just so you all know, we had 40% visual, 47% kinesthetic, and 13% auditory. And that'll be really interesting when you see the next slide here. So here are the 3. And this is the average, this is the population. If you go out and sample a population, this is the percentage of people that will fall into the different modalities. So the 2 most common are visual, kinesthetic at 40 and 40. Auditory is 20. And when you think about that, you think about classroom learning, right? Think about high school, college, all of these things, and how the information is presented. And it's presented in a way that is primarily geared to auditory learners, right? And so you end up not really getting the true engagement with the people that you're communicating with, because you're not giving them the information in a way that they can actually absorb and learn it. So, as you think about your sales processes, your ways of reaching your customers, everything that you do within marketing, everything that you do within sales scripts, if you do that, you need to think about these learning modalities and how you can design marketing or scripting in order to reach the most amount of people where they'll remember the information and where they will understand what it is that you're saying. So, for example, if you have marketing material that's visual, somebody sees charts and graphs, things like that, and then you have them, if you're engaging with them, they see the product, they get to try the product, they get to look at the product, that kind of thing. Then all of a sudden you've got, 80% of people are going to naturally be able to absorb what you're saying. So the 3 tools of communication are words, meaning the content. What exactly is it that you're saying? This is something that everybody works on within their sales process. Whether it be scripting or if you have a way of overcoming objections, you have kind of a canned approach to do that, and it's all about what you say, right? Second one is voice, meaning how do you say it? What is your tone? What is are you saying it in an upbeat manner, a very serious manner? These kinds of things. And then the last one is body language, meaning how are you representing yourself when you're having the communication, right? And this is in order of importance, how important all these areas are in conveying a message to another party. And you'll see that words is the least important, because again, as we talked about earlier, people buy on emotion, right? They want to feel a connection with you. They're not looking so much at what you're saying, but it's, how are you saying it to me? Are you saying it to me like I feel like you care about me and my family, or what happens to me in the future? And then body language there's a multitude of information on this as well, but it's a way that people judge your intentions. They look to see how assertive you are. They look to see how confident you are. If you're not confident, they're not confident, right? So they tend to read body language and somewhat mimic it. So when you think about your sales force or your sales team, and the way that they're engaging customers, it's very important to look at these particular areas and say, okay, how do we make sure we have consistency here? How can you authentically present yourself in a manner that people are going to respond positively to your body language? Public speakers are very animated, and that's not an accident, right? They're public speakers, but body language is really the critical component, or you lose the whole audience. Okay, neuro-linguistic programming. Now, this is a subject that we could have books about, right? All right, so let's look at the breakdown here of the three areas. So neuro, obviously neurology. How do we think? How do we code out the experience in our mind? How do we process it? How do we retain it? What's our memory imprint? And how does that thinking affect our results and our experience? The language piece of neuro-linguistic programming is understanding the relationship between how the brain processes information and then how the body, how you speak in reference to that. So again, we've got to go real high level here, but basically, I'll give you an example. So we talked about the learning modalities earlier, right? So if someone, you can pinpoint someone's learning modality without testing them or asking them or anything else in the way that they communicate with you. And we all know we're trying to create a connection in sales in a short amount of time, right? So it's very important to know what to look for, know what to listen for, and make sure you're listening. So an example would be if somebody says, well, I don't feel like, I really need this product, right? So the word feel means, relates to the kinesthetic, right? So if somebody uses that word, then you know that they're probably a kinesthetic learner. You can also use that word when you're communicating with them. How would you feel about, right? So that's kind of the idea as far as applying this in the sales process. This is also used to treat anxiety and all kinds of other things. So the key is to mirror the behavior and match it. So as you're listening to someone else and you're hearing how they're speaking, the phrases that they use. So I feel, you may hear them say, well, how does that doesn't sound like something that I would want to do. That's auditory, right? And then the visual, maybe I can't see how this is a solution for me, or I just can't see it. if you're not getting that, you can also ask those types of questions and see what the response is. You can say, well, can you see how this would help you do X? And then listen and watch for the response. And pretty soon you'll figure out how that other person really thinks and processes information. And all of a sudden, your communication is 100 times more effective than if you just use a canned script approach or something of that nature. This is also really critical if you happen to be talking to somebody on the phone, because you can't see them. Again, body language is the primary factor in communication, and when you're talking to somebody on the phone, you've thrown it out the window. So what you have to do is pay special attention to their responses, how they're talking, and pick up specific words that they're using, because it's very difficult at that point to figure out, well, how do they really feel about this conversation? How do I need to adjust what I'm doing? Again, you got to mirror what they're doing without being able to see them. Don't mimic means, and you've probably experienced this to some degree, if you say, if you start to see a salesperson who adopts your body language just blatantly right in the middle of the conversation, right? Or they use the old follow-up of, you'll say a statement, right? Of, well, I don't know if I really want to do this because, I travel a lot, and this really isn't something that applies to me. And if they go, so you're telling me that you travel a lot, and this isn't something that applies to you, and then they create their follow-up statement, right? So it's very that's not a genuine response, and we as humans are pretty intuitive, and we pick up on it pretty quick that it's not a genuine response. And so you don't build rapport with somebody in that manner. They just feel like you're copying them in order to convince them to do what you want. And again, within sales, convincing them to do what you want is not at all the way you want to approach the conversation. But you see quite often that's exactly how salespeople approach the conversation. So now we're going to talk in detail about learning. So mastering new information, new subjects, and the 4 steps to that. So we had modalities before. That's how you absorb it. This is the actual steps to going from I have no idea to I am now master of this. Okay, so the 4 steps to learning are the bottom 4 here, from unconscious incompetence to unconscious competence. And you'll see it's kind of a never-ending stair step here, because once you reach unconscious competence with one subject, inevitably you go to the next stage where you are unconsciously incompetent again. So I'll explain the different levels here, and I'll give you an example of, say, like a young child driving a vehicle. So when you're unconscious incompetent, it basically means you don't know what you don't know. You're ignorant to the fact that you have absolutely no idea how to do such and such, because maybe you don't know anything about such and such. So a child driving a car, when they're a young child, they don't know that they can't drive a car. They don't know that they're supposed to drive a car. It's not within their realm of thinking. As they get a little bit more mature, they realize that they don't know how to drive a car. So they're aware that they don't know how to do this. And you start to, again, emotion plays into, from knowing that you don't know to knowing that you do know. That's what drives you to complete a task, right? Or complete learning some some subject that you want to become educated in. So now at conscious incompetence, a young child, they know that they don't know how to drive a car, but they want to drive a car, right? So as they proceed in age and whatnot, they start learning how to drive a vehicle. They get their driver's license. They go through driver's ed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They get their car from their parents, and off they go. And at that point, you're at conscious competence. You know that you now know how to drive the car. But it's not a second nature thing yet. You still have to think about what you're doing, right? It's not totally natural. Now, as an adult, when the child becomes an adult, and probably most of us are like this, they reach unconscious competence, meaning they know not only how to drive a car, but they can do it virtually without thinking, right? So they're running down the road eating their Whataburger and listening to music and everything else, and they're not having to actively think about every single deal involved with driving a vehicle. It's second nature at this point. And that's where most of us are, right? Driving a car is second nature. And then an example of how this goes into the next piece of your unconscious incompetence again, and starts the cycle all over again, is sure, we know how to drive a car and it's second nature, but do we know how to drive an Indy car? Do we know how to drive a semi? Probably not. And so that's when you reach that unconscious incompetence again. You never thought about, do you need to know how to drive an Indy car? And so it starts all over again, if that makes sense. Great salespeople have a purpose. So focus on your prospect, not your product. And we talked about that a little bit earlier with the different categories of salespeople. It's all about the person you are interacting with. It's about what they need. It's about what they want. And you're trying to help them determine that your product could be a solution to what their problem is, right? You're the problem solver in an ideal situation. So it's all about the relationship, and it's all about rapport, and building a good relationship in a short amount of time requires you to be actively listening and actively engaged in the conversation. And I'm sure most of you have heard about active listening and seen articles and whatnot on that type of subject. So the problem solver's best weapon is questions. Questions are extremely powerful because you're able to guide your prospect into thinking about how your product or service could be a solution for them. And it draws the information out that you need to complete the sale. If you just talk and you say, well, this will do this and this will do that, then you don't know if that's important to them, right? So you have to be able to engage them with questions so that they'll tell you, hey, no, I think we should go this direction with this conversation because this is what I really want. And so that's why it's critical to take the seat of asking about the other person. How do you feel about this? What do you think about this? And let them really tell you what it is that they're looking for. And then you can kind of course correct the conversation, right, to keep it on task, redirect if needed. If they get down a rabbit hole or you hit a dead end, you're able to circle that back into productive conversation again. And that's the hallmark of a great salesperson. Listening twice as often as you speak, and they'll sell themselves. I kind of covered that. Ask them a good question. And you want probing questions, deeper questions, right? So you ask the initial question, you get an answer, and then you just dig a little bit deeper, and pretty soon you'll figure out what exactly is their dissatisfaction, and why are they looking for something new. And again, they'll sell themselves. That's what we mean by saying guide them to buy. You don't have to sell anything. They'll sell themselves on it if they want it, and there's a high likelihood that they want something if they're engaging with you in the first place, right? So after every question, listen attentively and give out positive strokes. So what we mean by positive strokes is, we talked about that mimicking thing earlier that a lot of sales groups do, where they say, "Oh, so you're telling me," and then they repeat the question, repeat the statement that the prospective customer just said. But that doesn't really dig deeper, does it? It doesn't really further the conversation. It just pretty much says, "Hey, I was listening to you and I heard what you said." But it doesn't say, "I'm trying to figure out how to help you with what you said and what we might need to look at next in order to help you solve this problem." Even an objection. Okay, well, objections are great because they tell you what is the actual solution that they're looking for. If you listen to the objection and give out a positive stroke, which all that means is you're acknowledging what they say and you're appreciating it with your response. You're saying, "Thanks, I appreciate your thinking on this. I appreciate your reasoning. So, how about if we look at such and such?" Again, a question, right? How do we, okay, so how could we make this more effective for you? Because it's all about the client satisfaction. So while you're asking those questions, give out little pieces of information, meaning you're giving tidbits along the way of what this is where you can kind of give product service features, this kind of thing, but you don't do it all at once, and you don't do it in a script format. While you're asking questions and they're responding, you can say something along the lines of, "So do you ever feel like you need help in this area? Because that's really where we focus a lot with this product or service, is helping people solve X problem in their life, right? Or making this certain thing easier." So maybe you're selling a mop for wood floors. So the question may be, well, do you ever have issues with spills on wood floors that kind of seem to linger with the, say you spill a Coke, wood floors are very durable, but you kind of get that residue left over. And, the whole advantage of having wood floors is they should be easy to clean. But, if you have a vacuum that you use, oftentimes it's not going to pick up gummy residue, right? So you can ask them something along those lines and then say, "Well, that's exactly what our product does. That's the problem that we're trying to solve." And again, you want to talk in their language. So everybody runs at a different pace. Everybody has another style. So you never want to take the approach of using any industry jargon, anything that they wouldn't know right out of the gate. So you don't want to talk about your mop does this because it has, such and such patented microfiber, blah, 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 down into the weeds. This thing is, a miracle. You just want to say, this is the function of it, and this is what it does, and you don't have to worry about it, if that makes sense. WIFM. WIFM is an acronym, and it stands for What's in it for me. And this is something that you always use when you're looking at how to engage the marketplace, be it marketing or direct, sales, cold calling, walking in to a business, or engaging with customers directly. What's in it for them? What do they gain from what you do. And then you highlight that. Here's some questions to think about, and these aren't applicable in every single market, but one of the things that is pretty common in professional services, for example, is, and this just helps you get to the agreement phase of the sale. So this is preventing objections before you get way down the conversation of assuming the sale and moving forward. First one being authority. So what happens a lot is, you, the salesperson, or your sales team, can engage a person, go through the entire communication process, and then it turns out, that person needs to consult with their spouse or their business partner or something of that nature. So if you build in this question somewhere in the process of communicating with them while they're a prospect or a suspect of, who other than yourself would be involved in making this decision, then you can say, all right, well, how about if the three of us got together and talked about how this could be a solution for you or something, just so you get that engagement from all the decision makers up front, and that's what you need in order to complete the sale. Because it's very hard to go through this with 50% of the decision maker, right, an individual, and then have to turn around and go back and try to repeat the process with both of them there. It just gets kind of muddy, and sometimes you can lose the sale because of that. Finances. So this is, about their ability to purchase this particular product or service. So you just ask them directly, hey, I know finances are very important. Money is very important to everybody. Can I ask what budget you've set aside for this purchase? It's a direct question, but it's, what is the amount of money that you're comfortable spending on this particular thing that you're looking for? And that way you can help guide them faster to a solution that actually works for them. If you don't ask this type of question, people have a way of saying, well, I want the moon and the stars and everything else, but I don't really want to pay for it. And so you get down to the end and they're like, yeah, I want the super deluxe package. And when you get into talking about the pricing, it's, oh, no, I can only afford the junior package. And then you have to go back and, have an entirely different conversation about that. You never want them to tell you they want the features and benefits of the top tier product if that's not really the product that's in their budget. And this is a good way to kind of get that out in the open within the communication process, so that when you're getting down to the actual offer, you know what to offer them. So after you've reached their emotion, you've tapped in, you've dug deep enough that their dissatisfaction, right? What is it exactly that they're looking to solve? What do they not like? And you've gotten the information. This is the offer, right? So you can say, based on what you've told me, and you give them options. Here's a couple of solutions that would suit you the best. Maybe they have a little bit different price point. Maybe the features and benefits are a little bit different, but you give them the choice. Because again, they'll sell themselves. They will pick what they feel most comfortable with without you having to force them to make that decision. Just give them a couple of options and then don't say anything and let them speak. After you've offered a solution, you're going to do a temperature check, meaning you're looking at body language specifically. Or if you're unable to, you're very much listening to the tone of voice in their responses on how do they feel from an emotional standpoint about the offers that you gave them. Are they kind of backing up a little bit and going, I don't really know. I just don't know if I can make a decision like this right now. Or are they going, wow, yeah, it looks like option X is exactly what I need. So this is a critical point in the sales process, that you want to be focused 100% on what the prospect is doing, saying, acting like. Are they crossing their arms and kind of backing up a little bit, or are they bent over this piece of paper on the table and going, oh wow, that's awesome, look at this, look at that. And then the detailed question follows this. So once you've got a kind of a picture of where they're at, then you ask them a detailed question about, so you think, and by detailed we mean specific to the offering, right? So you think that the option X that will give you such and such and such and such and such and such is really that's the best fit, right? And they say, well, yes. And you say, okay, well, great. And this is another way to say that. How does option X fit with what you had in mind? Or you can go with the either or if you're not sure, if you're looking at what their body language is telling you, or they're saying, that they may seem a little bit on the fence with what is the choice that they want to make. And you can say, well, which one fits best with what you had in mind? Because again, if you're really looking at how they're acting and you're actively listening to what they're saying, you can determine, are they considering two offers, or are they honed in on one? And you assume the sale, right? When you assume the sale after the offer, it eliminates discussing the price piece of the agreement, right? So you're not still negotiating over, a 10% this way, and I want more time, or this, that, and the other. Because if it's the right solution to their problem, and it's a fair value to them, so what they pay versus what they get is an acceptable thing, then the price is really kind of irrelevant. You don't price shoppers can kill you from a business standpoint. You don't want to get them addicted to discount. When you discount something, they start to expect the discount. If you can give them value added features that don't cost you a lot of money, that feels to them better than a discount, because they feel like you gave them something, not that you were gonna charge them this, but because they negotiated, they're only gonna pay that. It feels like, well, okay, I'm important enough that I got this additional feature or service because they care about me. And I think we talked about this in one of our other webinars, but perceived indifference is one of the main reasons that people don't continue to do business with you. They don't think that you care whether they do business elsewhere or not. So this is a great way from the outset of the very first agreement to make them aware that you do care, right? And then you have the close. So just a basic statement that, and this is an example, based on what you've told me, and then say their name, we'd be crazy not to go ahead, wouldn't we? Maybe not the language you want to use. You can customize this kind of statement in any way you want, but the important thing to look at is the use of we and going ahead together, meaning there's a relationship created, right? Because if it's, oh, well, let's go ahead and complete this purchase, you take this thing home, that doesn't really say anything about you and the guy or gal building any rapport or relationship with each other. If you talk about going ahead together, that plants the seed that we do have a relationship with each other. which is super critical for repeat purchases, for referrals, for the customer experience in general. This is how you get raving fans rather than a single one-off transaction. So, poll question number 3, do you feel prepared to handle sales objections? And this is just a yes or a no. Perfect. And we have, the majority of people say, yeah, they can handle sales objections. It's a 80-20, right? Pareto's law, 80%. Yeah, we can handle that. 20%, no, we don't feel comfortable yet. So we'll discuss objections quickly. Some common ones. First one is the money objection. I don't have the money to spend on this right now. Does that mean they don't have money, or does that mean they don't see the value? More often than not, it's they don't see the value. So you use value-based content to show how using your product or service will create a return for them. Meaning that the product and service, it pays for itself in either time saved, actual profit dollar return, such and such and such and such. That's the value proposition of what you do. And very often you have to explain that to people because they don't know exactly why they don't see the value in it. But if you can break it down to them and say, all right, well, you said that your time is important to you, or you said that, if it's a business, for example, you have productivity issues in this area. So if we were able to do such and such and such and such to save you time or improve efficiency in, say, your payroll department, then the return back to you within a couple of months is greatly going to exceed the investment that you're making now. Investment is another great word to use rather than purchase, because an investment implies exactly this, that you're getting a return back for the money that you've spent. No time. I don't have time for doing this right now. It's just not something that I really want to spend my time doing. What that says is, this is not a priority to me. There are other things that I currently think are more important than doing this. And if they say that, there's a pretty good chance that you did not establish the dissatisfaction and the probing questions in the initial piece of the conversation that says, that gets them to realize where they're at from an emotional standpoint currently, and what this product or service could do for them in the future. So when we say dig for hurt, let them feel the pain, that's a little bit of an extreme statement, but what we mean is you've got to dig deeper than you did. You didn't get deep enough in the first time. And people sometimes don't realize dissatisfaction without being guided there. It's back to the learning thing. You don't know what you don't know. Maybe you don't realize that you're putting yourself in a position that's not ideal because you didn't know there was any other solutions out there. So the redirect at that point is to go back and ask deeper questions to figure out what the real emotional reason is that they're spending time with you. Because again, if they're spending time with you, they're looking for something. So handling objections. This is really more discussion that you might have on a phone call, or maybe you're talking to the gatekeeper of a business, and their whole profession is to keep you from engaging with the decision makers in the business. So when you're asking them for, you go to the agreement piece of the sales process, right? And you're like, okay, well, we want to do this, this, and this, and they say, well, no, because maybe one of those objections we just talked about, maybe some totally different objection, or if you're just trying to get to the decision maker, oh, well, he's too busy. And I don't really care what you do or what you have to say, he's too busy. These are the kind of questions you can ask to get a little bit further and actually engage the conversation. So you could say, is there any other reason besides the fact that he's constrained with his time right now? Because I could certainly, make myself available in any other any other day. Happy to do remote, happy to send some information, happy to have a conference call, open up the options to respect the person's time, but also get them engaged so that they're talking to you. If they say there's not another reason, there is another reason, but they're not telling you. So you say, well, okay, well, there's got to be another reason. Do you mind if I ask what it is? Because they're designed to give that default, nah, I'm not interested, or no, whatever. And they don't really think about the secondary follow-up answer to another question of, well, there's got to be another reason. What is it really? Because there always is, right? You don't ever show your cards. You just say, oh, I'm not interested. It's not a good time. Whatever. Those are the default objection statements, but they're not. It doesn't come from a deep place. So as you go back and say, well, there's got to be something else, right? That makes you not want to do this right now. That helps get them to start telling you the real reason. So, all right, we're going to have to blow through some additional things here. So the agreement, we've pretty much discussed the agreement. These are questions that you want to ask. And again, you're going to get these slides. So from payment perspective, how do we want to pay for this? Do you want to do this at my office or here if you're, in their realm? Getting information, don't talk. Let them tell you exactly what it is that you're looking for. This is typically a webinar, so we can't interact, but we can do Q&A, and we can do that now. Michelle, if we have time, I'm not sure if we do. So, but I'm at that point.
Hey. We had a lot of discussions in the chat box, but I just want to say that, and we are short on time. So there was a lot, as you said, this is supposed to be a much longer presentation. I know you even cut it down just to make it fit in this hour. So thank you for doing that. We will have more of these presentations down the road. So hopefully we can start having some in person, because I know a lot of this is really workshop type material. Right. But I will say that there were, you really made me rethink some of our sales processes too. Won't give away all of our secrets, but there was one thing at the very, very beginning, early on, you gave us a task on belief systems.
Yes.
And you said, what are your beliefs about money? And then what are your beliefs about some of the other things? Like, can you clarify what you mean about that? Like, give me an example of belief about money.
So belief about money is what is how do you see money as, is it something that is a means to get you what you want? Do you like things, right? Or do you see money as something that you get in return for your efforts, right? So maybe more the wage for dollars type mindset. Or do you see money as if I invest money in X, then I'm going to get a return based on my investment, things like that. How important is money itself to you really? Does it drive all your decisions, or are your decisions more about, you know, different values, different things that you may look for, like emotional and maybe family is the primary driver, that kind of thing. It's more the exercise of defining money, right?
Like, why is money important to you?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. And then it was really interesting to me how how low auditory was as far as how people learn and how to engage them.
Right.
What is your recommendation for a lot of us? A lot of companies do phone sales primarily.
Yes.
As you were talking, I was thinking about using that verbiage in a sales call, for example, like, as you can see,
yes.
or or use the word envision or things like that. So a lot of people do that because it's just, you can get to more people, but your conversion rate's going to be lower. Is that just something that we accept, or are there other things that we can do to make it more engaging, other than your voice inflection, because you don't have the body language either?
Right.
So.
And that's why it is difficult. I mean, and the conversion rate will inevitably be lower on phone sales, but acquisition cost per customer is sometimes fairly low in that method, because you're able to contact a large amount of people without a lot of investment. So that's primarily why people use that method. But as far as the success rate and converting leads to clients, it's always going to be lower. If you can put into your languaging terms like we talked about that make them visualize what it is that you're offering or how it could apply to them in their life, and you're asking questions about their day-to-day, if you will, depending on what it is that you're doing, they will create an image in their mind, if nothing else. They can't see it, they can't touch it, but at least you can get them to somewhat visualize what it is that you're talking about. If they're just listening, they don't. It's just like, there's a pretty good chance they're not going to get it.
And maybe even adding an emotion into it, like, doesn't it make you angry when?
Exactly.
Okay.
Help them feel it, because they can't naturally.
Okay, awesome. All right. There are no further questions in the Q&A or in the chat box.
Okay.
There were some questions about you conducting a communication, or somebody from your team conducting at the communication thing. So we'll put that on our menu for next year, or maybe even later this year. Thank you for rounding out. Thank you to your team for doing this series for us. Hopefully you guys can still join us on Monday. Brian Brandt from Core Insights will be presenting about effective time management. He's also a wonderful presenter, also has a Dale Carnegie franchise here in East Texas. So hopefully you'll join us for that. My team will be joining us. I'll be listening in as well. And then that's going to be our last one until September. We are moving, so we need some time to move. So we're going to take a little bit of a break from our webinars until early September, and you guys will all get notifications on that. Hopefully you will join us. I'm sorry, my bad. We have two next week, and then we take a break. We have one on Wednesday about diversity, creating policies, best practices, things like that. A lot of small businesses don't have an HR department, so this is just kind of information to help you guys develop some policies that are good and healthy for your workplace. And so hopefully we'll see you a couple more times next week, but thank you all for joining us this week, and have a great weekend. I hope you guys have a lot of fun things planned, even if you have to do them at home. Enjoy your families, and we'll see you next time.